Good morning. Thank you, Jeremy. As Jeremy said, ID.me originally started as Troop ID with a focus exclusively on veterans. The challenge was that, well, we have 24 million veterans and active duty service members in the United States. Veterans don't have a national ID card. When you leave the service, unless you retire, you don't get a veteran's ID. And even if you received a physical card, that would do nothing to help you with online transactions. So there was effectively a barrier or a wall between our service members, veterans, and these different benefits that they should have access to. A lot of companies offer veterans and active duty service members discounts in their brick and mortar environment. Under Armour is a good example, Sears, Lands' End, many others. But to get access to those discounts and benefits, you have to present a copy of your discharge papers. Do we have any veterans in here? All right. So everybody who's served on active duty and was discharged will be familiar with this form. It's the DD-214. But look what this form has on it. It's got your first and last name. It's got your birth date, your social security number, your home of record, where the address where you last served, nearest family member. What a great place to start on Ancestry.com looking for your mother's maiden name, right? And your current mailing address. Veterans were being required to hand this piece of paper to waiters, waitresses, clerks in commercial environments, state offices, federal offices to get access to a benefit. And that's exposing them. I mean, giving someone this document is like saying, here, steal my identity, please. And so we felt that there was a better way to do it, a way to take this information, create a credential that asserts an attribute. This person served, they're a veteran. All the relying party needs to know is yes or no. Protect this information, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, but take this document out of the equation and give veterans and service members access to benefits online. Oh, another thing is that a lot of retailers would not put benefits online. Under Armour is a good example. They were our first large retailer because of the risk of fraud. I've read somewhere that there are something like 40,000 people online who say that they've been a Navy SEAL. And there haven't been that many Navy SEALs in the history of the program. So they were reluctant to put benefits online because there wasn't a reliable, authoritative way to verify an individual's status. This gives members access to benefits that they would not otherwise have in the form of a digital credential. It removes the liability. It reduces the risk of fraud for the relying party, and Jeremy mentioned that, our approach is to, what do relying parties want to do? Well, if you're in the commercial space, you want to reduce fraud and increase revenue, and our credential allows them to do that. But it also minimizes the liability that the veteran faces by handing that DD-214 over and over and over again. And also, who carries their discharge paper around with them in their pocket? I don't. Mine's in a lockbox at my house. That would be like asking someone to carry their birth certificate around to prove that they are in fact who they say they are. And also then creating a network of relying parties that generates awareness and really has a network effect and takes off so that they can share information and they can share these benefits and these discounts across a wide range of relying parties. We currently have 50 relying parties who are using our service. And we have a pipeline of about 150 more who are being integrated and working through contracts and negotiations. But by the end of the second quarter of this year, we expect to have around 200 relying parties in this network. Value proposition rests on being able to use authoritative sources from public information, whether it's a national EMT registry or medical licensing board, and Jeremy mentioned. So we started with veterans and Troop ID. And based on feedback from our relying parties, they wanted to provide those benefits to other affinity groups, and we're now offering this to students and first responders as well. Physical credentials. John mentioned that, the states didn't want to have one more credential. Nobody wants to have another card they have to carry around in their pocket. They want to take the cards that they have, driver's license, first responder ID, student ID, and be able to reuse it in a new and different way securely. And then also being able to leverage private IPs from various membership groups like AARP, who's here, Military Officers Association, and many, many others. In our example, and I talked about how many relying parties we have, A member can start anywhere. Typically, they come to us through a relying party. Sometimes they come to us directly through our ID.me webpage. But someone goes to Under Armour or Overstock, and they're looking to buy something, and they say, hey, when they get into the checkout flow, and I'll show you a couple of use cases and how this actually works, they see the opportunity to save money, 10 to 15%. Low-level transaction, LOA1 type of thing, where, you know, they want to take advantage of this because of their affinity group. They're a veteran. So they sign up for an ID.me credential, they go back, they get their discount. And as they continue to, you know, to just live their life and they're planning a trip, they see an opportunity to log in to Marriott with their ID.me account. But they can also perhaps get access to an AARP account. We can bind that attribute to the existing credential. So they're not getting a new credential issued over and over again. And at the same time, one of our goals is then to be able to add eventually another affinity group. So I could be a veteran, I could also be a first responder, and I could also be a student. And all three of those could be tied to a single credential. And one of the big goals of our pilot is the ability to take a single credential and then elevate the level of assurance, to trust elevate it. To start off with what's effectively an LOA1 type of credential, I log in, I go to underarmour.com, I get 10% off on my purchase, but then I want to go to the VA and get access to medical records. But I don't want to have to create a DS logon. As a veteran, I can tell you I've been out of the service for a while. I've never had any interaction with the Veterans Affairs Administration. But I went through the process of getting a DS logon so I could understand what that takes. And it is not friendly. It is not user-friendly. It's cumbersome. And I'll probably forget my password in another week if I don't use it. But we want a member to be able to use the same credential for a low-level transaction, an LOA2 transaction, or an LOA3 transaction. So our overview, I'll not project as much. I'll back up.
No, it's automatic system.
Okay.
See if I can fix it for you.
Sure.
Try that.
All right, testing. All right. How's this? Better? Okay, we'll go. So aligning with the NSTIC principles, and I'm not going to read everything on here though, really focusing on privacy enhancing. Again, that service member shares their PII with us once, we lock it up, we encrypt it, we store it, but then they have a credential that they can reuse over and over again. Any data that is released is under the control of the member. They initiate the account, they log on, and they'll have access to determine which relying parties do I share my information with in a completely open and transparent manner. Interoperable. So we'll be building out a SAML 2.0 profile so that we can achieve the FICAM LOA2 and LOA3 certification. But we also want to be able to integrate with commercial, state, and federal activities. So the credential that we're developing is designed to be interoperable and cost effective. It never costs our members anything to sign up. Every veteran, every first responder, every student, they can sign up for an ID.me account at no cost. The cost of doing the verification is borne by the relying parties, and they're charged based on the number of on a transaction fee basis. Schedule overview, you guys are going to see a lot of Gantt charts today, I guess, but we've broken this down into essentially 3 phases. The first phase is the foundational work, integrating with our identity proofing partner Experian. I think Tim Starkey is here. We are also developing the SAML profile, which we didn't have. We're also doing all of the really cumbersome work of developing the documentation and putting together everything that we're going to need for our Cantera LOA2, LOA3 process. Phase 2 is adding multi-factor authentication. We're going to be working with Dayon to add their multi-factor authentication. We're also going to be integrating the ability to take an existing PIV-I, CAC card, an HSPD-12 credential. Someone can come in and put their CAC card in, and we can consume that to verify that an individual excuse me, is in the military or has a particular status, and then looking at integrating with FCCX. Phase 3 will be integrating with government agencies and state and federal agencies that actually require that higher level of assurance. Use cases. So I talked about Under Armour. Under Armour was probably our best first use case. They saw such an increase in revenue from the Troop ID veterans and reduction in fraud. that they are the ones who came back to us and said, this is such a great idea, we'd like to expand it to these other affinity groups. Can you do first responders? Can you do students? And we said yes. But when someone is in the checkout flow at Under Armour, you'll see that there'll be a widget there that says Troop ID, first responder, and they click on that to determine which discount or benefit they want to take advantage of, and then they're presented with the opportunity to log in with their ID.me credential. If they're not currently a member, then they're presented with the opportunity to join, and then the last screen you see over there actually shows then what they're presented with. And there are several different ways that they can verify their status as a veteran or an active duty service member. We're also going to be working with veteran service organizations. In this example, the Iraq-Afghanistan Veterans Association. Today, they allow service members to upload a copy of their DD-214, which then IAVA prints out. So they have a paper copy, stacks of paper copies of DD-214s in their office that they go through and process manually. We want to put this process online to make it easier for veterans who may be disabled or who may not have easy access to their DD-214s. And another thing, we're verifying not only veteran status, which is one attribute, but the fact that they served in either Iraq or Afghanistan. As a veteran who didn't serve in either one of those theaters, I wouldn't be eligible for this, and we have to be able to make that distinction in our process. This is an excellent example that I like here, and where a DMV is providing veterans with the opportunity to sign up for a veteran's identity card. And there are about 40 departments of motor vehicles, or 40 states rather, who do this in different fashions. And Virginia does it through a physical ID card. Some Department of Motor Vehicles put a mark on an existing driver's license that says, yes, this person is a veteran. But to streamline this process by making it an online process, again, giving access to people who might be disabled or not be near a DMV, or simply who choose not to go stand in line to wait for this card to be issued, but to put this process online and then verify through an authoritative source that an individual has served honorably. Today we have a pilot with the Department of Veterans Affairs with their Innovation Institute. This is for a low-level transaction. It was interesting that the VA had this program called Tech Shop that allowed returning veterans to sign up for training, up to $2,000 worth of training from large companies like Microsoft and others, well-known technical companies. But to get this benefit, prior to implementing the Verify with Troop ID, a veteran would have to take that DD-214, their discharge papers, to a Department of Labor office, and then get essentially a verification stamp that said, yes, this person is a veteran. We've done an in-person proofing of their status, and then go back and enter a code online. Again, adding an in-person process to something that should be entirely online. Now that they have the Troop ID widget integrated, it's an entirely online process. And again, we're looking at sort of this as a first effort then to being able to work with the Department of Veterans Affairs across a wider range of levels of assurance. So we started with the challenge of veterans being separated from deals and discounts by effectively a barrier, a wall. They didn't have an ubiquitous, national digital identity. They don't even have a physical identity. As we go through this pilot and we begin to put the pieces in place, achieve our LOA2 and our LOA3 through the FICAM or Cantera process, we're going to break down those barriers so that a veteran can use the same credential for a low-level transaction, getting a discount on Under Armour, getting an employment opportunity, technical training through the VA, or access to their benefits where it might exist in addition to their DS logon, not necessarily as a complete replacement for that process, anything up to even accessing medical records. So thank you, and I'll be available after this for questions, and I'm here for the rest of the day.